Tonight we are looking at 3 horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. In Slovenia, a 90-year-old ladder keeps one rotten rung. In Florida, a jump line hunts a fin in the flow. And in Mexico, a 2-meter step costs 20 years. Each story starts with confidence and ends in chaos. As always, viewer discretion is advised. This is Cavern Depths. 3 real caves, 3 stories that went wrong. The first one begins now. On March 27th, 2026, Maja Kovac walked into Škocjan, one of the deepest underground river canyons on Earth. A cold stone gorge so vast that clouds form under its ceiling and bridges cross it 100 meters above the dark. The show trail is lit and fenced. The old service routes are neither. She was surveying the abandoned East Gallery alone, a condition check on routes the public has not walked since before the Second War. Maja was 34, a surveyor from Huautla who had mapped the Karst's caves for 9 years, and who ate lunch on the same mossy bank outside the entrance before every trip, rain or shine. Her habit was the map margin, every ladder, bridge, and stile on her route sketched in the margin with its age beside it. Because in an old cave, she liked to say, the rock is the youngest thing you will stand on. Her kit was a surveyor's kit. Laser, notebook, 60 meters of survey line, whistle, knife, lighter, counted into her pockets. What she didn't know, the East Gallery's iron ladder, bolted to the wall in 1936, had been rusting from the inside of its rungs, where no inspection lamp can look. The gallery ran clean, her boots scraping 90 years of dust, the laser clicking, water hissing far below in the gorge where the Reka River disappears. Nothing went wrong on the flat sections, because on the flat sections, nothing was holding her up. At the gallery's end, she reached the old ladder, 20 rungs down a dry rock face to the lower ledge, 60 meters above the river. What she didn't know, rung 11 had about 40 kilograms of honesty left in it. 11 rungs down, that is when the iron failed, because the rung sheared inside her grip without a sound of warning, and her boots swung over 60 meters of dark, and the next rung down took her weight, and then it bent. She stepped down onto the lower ledge fast and light, the way you leave thin ice. Behind her, the ladder hung crooked off its last good bolts. Above her, 9 vertical meters of rungs she could never trust again. Below her, the gorge. Here is what you need to understand about old iron in a wet cave. It does not age like the rock. Limestone thinks in millions of years, iron in decades, and a rung that held 1,000 boots can be a shell of rust paint around a hollow core, waiting for boot 1001. A surveyor writes the ladder's age in the margin. The rust does not read the margin. Panic lives on a ledge with a broken ladder. The climb out had failed. She was stuck 60 meters up. Her radio said nothing this deep. Her call out was 5 hours away. Because this is the arithmetic of a stranded surveyor. The gallery holds 8 degrees day and night. A still body loses its warmth to stone by contact. And 5 hours of waiting costs more strength than 1 hour of careful work. Watch a surveyor turn 60 meters of string into a staircase. First, she did not touch the ladder. A bent rung under load is a spring waiting to let go, and the margin note beside it now read, in fresh pencil, condemned. Second, she doubled the survey line through the ladder's top anchor bolts, the only iron she could reach that had lived indoors, and knotted foot loops into it, 1 every half meter, 22 loops, tested one by one with her full weight on the ledge. Put yourself on that rope ladder for 1 minute of it. A foot loop of 4mm string biting your boot, 60 meters of dark under your heels, both hands full of line, and the arithmetic of 22 loops against 2 hands that have been cold for 3 hours. The climb took 50 minutes. Loop, wait, breathe, loop. She passed the sheared rung without touching it. At the top, she clipped her cowstail to the anchor, hauled the line up, coiled it, and sat 1 full minute against honest rock before she stood. She walked out into the Karst afternoon 2 hours before her call-out would have tripped, with an empty line bag and a margin note that closed a 90-year-old route. The park's report recorded a sheared rung on the 1936 ladder. A surveyor trapped 1 hour on the lower ledge and self-rescued on an improvised line ladder, and no injuries. The east gallery is closed pending rebolting, and every iron ladder in the system now carries an ultrasound date beside its age. One of the deepest underground canyons on Earth still makes its own clouds, and the Reka still hisses far below the old galleries. The rock is the youngest thing you will stand on, Maya still tells the new surveyors. So what carried her out? Anchor bolts that lived dry, 22 knots tested like witnesses, and the patience to build a staircase instead of trusting a spring. The report recorded 50 minutes of climbing. She survived every loop of it. You're watching Cavern Depths, and this is the second story of the night. On May 16, 2026, Lena Ward and Nate Colby dropped into Devil's Eye, the gateway to one of the longest surveyed underwater cave systems in the United States. A blue spring pouring 30,000 liters a minute through a gap in the Florida woods. The water is glass. The flow is a river trying to leave. They were diving the classic gallery circuit on a 1-hour plan. 2 tanks each, thirds counted twice, 40 minutes of bottom time, the rest in reserve. Lena was 29, a cave diver from Gainesville who had logged 400 cave dives in 6 years, and who called her father from the spring deck before every dive, a ritual older than her certification. Nate was 32, her regular buddy, the stronger swimmer and the worse sleeper, the one who had promised his wife he would never dive this system with anyone else. Their habit was the touch contact drill, rehearsed on the grass before every dive, eyes closed, each finding the other's valves and shears by feel. Underwater, Lena liked to say, your buddy's hands are the only part of the plan that cannot silt out. The system was rigged as always, a gold mainline deep in the gallery, and short jump lines bridging it to the side passages. What they didn't know, a training team had relayed the gallery jump 6 inches low, and the flow had bellied its slack to exactly fin height. The descent ran like a postcard, the eye swallowing them out of the sunlight, regulators hissing steady, the main line taut and gold under their torches, bubbles crawling the ceiling like mercury, bolt snaps clicking against steel. Nothing went wrong on the way in, because they swam above the jump, high in the clear water. They turned the dive at 38 minutes, on schedule, both tanks a comfortable third down. What they didn't know, the exit leg ran low, straight along the bellied line. 200 meters from the exit, that is when the clean water failed them, because the bellied jump line caught Nate's left fin mid-kick, and the flow that carries divers out spun him sideways and wound the slack around the blade in one smooth wrap. He twisted to look back, and the twist made it worse, one wrap becoming 2 in 30 seconds. His trim collapsed, his tank scraped the ceiling, and the glass water behind them turned to milk. Here is what you need to understand about line in flowing water. Slack is never still. A bellied line breathes with the current, and it does not wrap a fin the way rope wraps a post. It wraps like thread on a spinning spool, tighter with every movement that is not a knife. A diver fights a tangle and feeds it. A buddy team starves it. Panic lives 200 meters from daylight. The exit had failed. His fin was wound tight. The silt was climbing. Her torch found his eyes, and his eyes were wide. Because this is the arithmetic of a tangle in flow. A working diver breathes 3 times his resting rate. The reserve was cut for a calm exit, and 11 minutes of struggle spends 40 minutes of budget. Watch 1,000 rehearsals cash out in milk-white water. First, Lena flooded the passage with light and gave him the signal that matters most. Stop. Nate put both hands on the main line and stopped feeding the spool. The wrap stopped winding. Second came touch contact. Her hand walked down his leg to the fin by feel, exactly as drilled, and her shears opened the wrap 2 strands at a time while silt erased the torches. Put yourself in that whiteout for 1 minute of it. A hand you trust working somewhere below your knee, a mainline humming in the flow under your gloves, your own bubbles the only proof of up, and 2 tanks draining 3 times faster than the plan. The cutting took 4 minutes. The fin came free with half a jump line still knotted to it. They exited hand over hand along the main line through their own silt, and the eye opened above them like a lid coming off. They surfaced into the Florida afternoon 11 minutes late, with 400 pounds of gas to spare and a fin wearing a bow tie of stolen line. The dive log recorded a diver trapped in the gallery jump 200 meters in, freed by his buddy in 4 minutes on touch contact, and both out with reserve intact. The shop relayed the jump that evening, and the briefing board now reads, "Yesterday's cave is not today's." One of the longest underwater cave systems in America still pours its river through the Devil's Eye. Your buddy's hands are the only part of the plan that cannot silt out. Lena still teaches on the grass. So what swam them out? A stop signal obeyed against every instinct, shears that found a fin by feel, and thirds cut deep enough to pay for 11 unbudgeted minutes. The report recorded 4 minutes of cutting. Both divers survived them with air to spare.
You're watching Cavern Depths, and tonight's final story is the one they still talk about.
On April 25, 2026, Alan Price and Karen Voss walked into Sistema Huautla, the deepest cave system in the Americas, 1.5 vertical kilometers of shafts and cold canyons sunk under the Oaxaca cloud forest. Expeditions here are measured in weeks. The cave is measured in lifetimes. They were hauling supplies to Camp 3, a rigging leg they had each run a dozen times, down the entrance shafts, along the traverse ledges, sleep below, come back up. Alan was 46, a Welsh rigger who had logged 500 expedition days underground in 20 years, and who carried a flat pebble from his son's first caving trip zipped in his chest pocket. Every expedition, without fail. Karen was 51. A German alpinist turned caver, the team's safety officer and its slowest, most deliberate mover, the one the young cavers imitated when they thought she was not looking. Her habit was the clip-in count. Every cow stale clipped, counted out loud, at every anchor, every time, even on moves she could do asleep. Routine, Karen liked to say, is where accidents go to wait. Between pitch 9 and pitch 10 runs a famous little traverse, a ledge, a 2-meter gap, a polished step, and a fixed line beside it that most cavers ignore. What they didn't know? The week's haul bags had dripped on that step for days, and the wet polish was now closer to glass than stone. The first hours ran clean, ropes hissing through descenders, carabiners clattering on the rebelays, drips ticking into the dark below the ledges. Nothing went wrong on the pitches, because on the pitches they were clipped to bolted rope every meter of the way. They reached the traverse at 600 meters down, on schedule, 20 minutes from camp. What they didn't know, the streak was about to end. At the gap, that is when the routine failed, because Alan stepped across unclipped the way 1,000 cavers had before him, and the wet polish took his boot sole the way ice takes steel, and the step that was 2 meters wide became 40 meters deep. There was no cry. There was a scrape, one long second of silence, and the sound of a helmet finding stone far below, once, and then the drips again. Here is what you need to understand about the unclipped step. It is not a skill decision, it is a bet. The odds are excellent, 1,000 to 1, 10,000 to 1, and the stake on the table every single time is everything. A fixed line does not make the step easier, it makes the bet unnecessary. A caver polishes the step with every crossing. The step remembers every boot. Panic stood alone on the ledge. The step had failed him. Alan was 40 meters down. His light was not moving. Her shouts came back as echoes with nothing in them. Because this is the arithmetic of a 40-meter fall. It is over in 3 seconds. It forgives nothing past 10. And the nearest doctor stood 8 hours of rope and mule track away. Watch the safety officer do her whole career in 20 minutes. She clipped the ignored fixed line, crossed the gap, rigged a drop from the traverse bolts, counted her cow stales out loud with a voice that did not sound like hers, and descended to him. She reached Alan in 19 minutes. She held his hand and read the answer in everything the beam showed her, and she stayed anyway, talking, until the camp team arrived and there was nothing left to decide. Put yourself on that rope for 1 minute of it. A descent you have rigged perfectly through hands that will not stop shaking, a light below you that has not moved since the scrape, and the arithmetic of 3 seconds against 20 years, already finished before you clipped in. The recovery took 4 days, 40 cavers, a rigged highline over the gap, and the slow, formal patience Huautla demands of everything, including grief. They brought Alan Price up through the shafts he had rigged himself, and the flat pebble in his chest pocket went home to Wales in his son's hand. The inquest ruled an unroped fall from the pitch 9 traverse and recorded a wet, polished step, a fixed safety line 4 bolts long and unused, and a streak of safe crossings that no logbook had ever counted. The expedition report closed with one sentence in bold: "The line is not optional anymore." The deepest cave in the Americas still swallows its expeditions whole, and the little traverse now wears a steel cable and a plate with a Welsh name on it. Routine is where accidents go to wait, Karen still tells every new team, at every anchor, every time. Alan died 40 meters below a step he had crossed 1,000 times. The report recorded the 1,000 and the 1. Nobody at Huautla crosses unclipped now.